right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Marwan Cameron. It is 3:04 p.m. in Kitsap County. It's 48 degrees. Today, and right now, is our conversation and housing concerns with the Bremerton Housing Authority and KCR. And every second Wednesday, we are joined by Kirsten Jewell. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on up. Kirsten, how are you doing today?
That's always the warmest welcome I get coming into an event. So I love that. Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you, Marwan.
Well, thank you for being here with us. And of course, we have the steadfast and always present Katie Sharp.
Hi, everyone.
Katie, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm just thinking about your comment about me being here every week. But last week I might have been busy. I was into something. I ended up not coming on that Wednesday. You probably opened it up like, where did everybody go? So here I'm back.
Well, you know what? And you had sent an email, and I think it was still the intention to come on, and I believe I had said, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Okay.
Is that how it went? I think that's what happened.
I don't know. I think I got caught up doing something, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's 3:50."
You are misconsistent. Let me just say.
I do my best, as we do.
I love it. Well, what we're going to do this week is normally we do a very deep dive conversation, but we have not had an opportunity to kind of do updates. So we're going to do updates today. I see that there are emergency vehicles in someone's neck of the woods. It's probably Katie.
Yes.
So we're going to go ahead and do updates. You'll be able to check out Jill Stanton tonight at City Council because she'll be presenting there. And, we cover that live, and I usually give public comment. So you'll see Jill there. And so anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to start off with Kirsten.
Do you mind starting off with Katie, just so I can prepare my thoughts? I'm sorry to make all this up, Katie.
I think I do that to you every single time. It's so funny. So let's go ahead and start off with and the shelters are not open. Let me turn that off. Sorry, I just want to get our stuff on here. We use a different background here. We'll start off with you, Katie.
Well, for the Bremerton Housing Authority, there's a lot of work starting up this task force with the community. Jill is one of the three kind of organizers of this affordable housing development task force that's happening, where housing opportunities are coming together with opportunities for funding and organizations that want to start developing affordable housing, or they already have an opportunity. They just don't know how to get the funding or anything like that. So it's a collaborative effort to come together and increase affordable housing supply. Bremerton Housing Authority is one of the main organizations in that task force. But I think the email that just went out, there were 77 individuals that are signed up as part of it right now. So it's growing. The word is getting out. It's a very exciting time. As from the Housing Authority standpoint, we can't do everything alone. So this coordination is key to making action happen. So we're really excited. I don't know if Jill's talking about that today, but I think in general, that is on our mind. How do we get that started? And how do we communicate that that's an opportunity for others to have an impact in affordable housing? And with that being said, I think that I'm just going to say, I think the team, the Tony Ives from KCR, Joe Crane from the St. Vincent de Paul, and Jill, one or all will come to the coalition meeting in April to present about this task force. That is a tentative plan. I'm hearing in the background that will happen. So that's exciting. And again, bringing together this coalition of community partners who are focused on homelessness services and housing, and then this task force focused on development. So again, bringing the partners together again, if you don't have, maybe you have some grant writing skills and you want to support affordable housing development, there's always opportunities to help with time. So, and again, like the coalition is really important in bringing these partnerships together. So next Wednesday, we're having a hybrid meeting for the coalition. And I wanted to put that out there as, again, it's the Kitsap Housing and Homelessness Coalition. And it will be our first hybrid meeting. And because we couldn't meet in December because of weather, we're presenting the 7 awards in person. So Marwan, did you want to talk about providing refreshments? And
yeah, I do. I do, but first let me say, I don't know if I would say necessarily a sea change in regard to this collaboration that's happening right now, but definitely a gear change, right? Because these organizations have been doing great work, especially through COVID and now kind of post-COVID. And there's like this next gear of saying, hey, we could do more together and let's all get on the same page and see how we can bring dollars into the county and into our cities to increase our housing stock. And so that's definitely a little bit different. It's like breaking down the silos and really taking advantage of different individual organizations' knowledge, skills, and abilities. Is that kind of how you see it?
That's how I see it, as far as, accomplishing our long-term strategy and our goals. Again, we can't do it alone. We can do so much more together. So I'm just glad to see this happening. I know it's at its baby stages, but the more voices we have right now and the more organization we'll get, it's just impressive to see how much has been done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So in regards to next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Is the Kitsap Housing and Homeless Coalition event, which we're super excited to be supporting. And I believe it is open to folks that want to come down to the Norm building.
Yeah, it's open to anyone to even meet with the partners, have just listen to the presentations and see what kind of impact was made last year from the award presentations, and then just to talk with everyone. I mean, it might be a short meeting. Usually our meetings are scheduled from 2 to 4, but we don't have any specific community presentations on the schedule. So it's more about celebrating the award winners and networking opportunities amongst the partners.
Yeah, and we're going to have some delicious desserts and treats for everyone. And of course, if you can't appear in person, we will be broadcasting that out live as we always do. But hopefully you will come down and meet some of the awesome people that are doing work here in the community. So it should be really exciting. And I look forward to seeing people.
Yeah, that's in downtown Bremerton at the Norm Dix building. I guess I've been hearing more and more that it's being called City Hall, just because the city is. I saw that today, and I've seen it before. So anyway, there's a lot of names, I think, but it's the Norm Dix Government Center, where the city and the mayor are, where they meet every Wednesday. So.
I appreciate you telling me that. I'll have to, change my language and start calling it City Hall.
I'm not saying I call it that, but I some people might know it as that, and I guess it makes sense. We're just used to calling it the Norm Dix building. But also, to that point, the meeting is right before the city council study session. I don't know if it's a study session next week or a meeting.
Yeah, it'll be a study session next week. Yeah.
Yeah, but they all happen in the same building, so.
I love it. All right. So yeah, please come on down. That'll be 2 p.m. and usually goes from 2 to 4, but like Katie said, probably won't go all the way till 4, but come have some desserts, do a meet and greet, network, as Katie was saying. We're going to have a good time. Anything else going on with Bremerton Housing Authority right now?
That's definitely the highlight. I think there's, we're presenting at different community meetings, getting the word out about what we do and how you can help. And always, if you know a landlord who, is interested in helping, with the housing crisis, housing voucher holders is a great way to support that solution. So if you just can contact us and we can work you into the Section 8 program, there's always good benefits to that. And it does support and increase housing supply. So.
Have you noticed any change in regards to new landlords coming forward and offering their properties up?
Yeah, we've seen an increase, but also we've seen a lot more housing happening. So we have less shoppers on the street, which is a good thing, right? So housing is becoming more available. And so again, just a consistency of working with landlords and having everyone ready to be part of the program. So we rely on landlords and we appreciate all the support they give us and the patience they give us because it's a very complicated program. So, but we're always open to having conversations and doing outreach as far as educating both the public and our partners or the landlords with what we do and how they can help.
I think it's good to kind of check in and see anecdotally, what's happening and what people are hearing, what direction things are moving in. So that's definitely encouraging and hopeful for sure. Well, thank you for that update. I appreciate that. Kirsten, are you ready?
I am, and thank you for your patience. I just was looking at some different legislative bills to see where they are in the process. I think I'll talk a little bit about legislative stuff at the end. But I just wanted to give a few updates. It's hard to remember what I've talked about the last time since a month goes by in the blink of an eye, and I can't remember if I've already covered some of this, so forgive me if I'm being duplicative. We are in the process of wrapping up our data entry for the point-in-time count. It's a massive effort to sort through all of the surveys and unduplicate them and then get them entered into the database correctly. The way the process works is that at the local level, we do some unduplication of those surveys. We're primarily concerned with surveys from people who are unsheltered and doubled up. People who are sheltered, their information is already in the database in Homeless Management Information System. And so we don't have to usually do anything with that data other than make sure that our shelter subcontractors have their data up to date for that night that data is getting pulled. So we're primarily focused on all the surveys that got collected during the Project Connect events and then during the outreach. So all of that gets entered into the Homeless Management Information System, and then the state looks at it and they vet it for any missing information or any duplicates. So there's sort of two phases of deduplication. And then usually around May, it usually takes the state a little while to actually do this. They usually give us what's called our certified numbers. So they've essentially gone through all their process of unduplicating and making sure all the data is correct. And then we get those certified numbers back. And then the state submits all of the numbers in aggregate to the federal government, which is a federal requirement. So it can take a lot of time because there's a lot of effort to try to make sure that the point-in-time count data is accurate and correct. So we might have some sort of preliminary numbers in a few weeks, but we have to wait until we get all that data rounded up and submitted. And we always produce a summary sheet of point-in-time count data. So if you want to look back at prior years, you can see those are all on the Housing and Homelessness Division web pages. I wanted to comment on the severe weather shelters. We've talked about this program a bunch, and it's a pretty remarkable program run by a huge number of volunteers. And we've had, we were actually activated for the severe weather shelter last night due to unseasonably cold weather. It's pretty rare in my memory that we're activating into March, into the second week in March, in fact. Technically, the severe weather shelter season is November 1st to March 31st, but it's rare that there's an activation in that first month or that last month. So we've been definitely having some unseasonably cold weather. I am so impressed with all of the shelter volunteers who have managed to step up and be able to open the shelters pretty much every night that we've that we've asked them to do that because we met the weather criteria. We do have some preliminary data on kind of numbers of people served so far, and we'll be putting that up on the website pretty soon. We usually produce a kind of end of the season report on numbers of people served and nights activated and all of that. But it's been an extraordinary effort, especially because we've had a really long stretch of cold weather for the last couple of weeks. So that program continues to do amazing work, and we're so grateful for all the people that they're helping. Every single person that they help is a person that potentially was saved from exposure that night. Wanted to talk a little bit about the coordinated grant application process. So this is the funding that it funds. This is the Homeless Housing Grant Program, the Affordable Housing Grant Program, the CDBG program, and the Home Program. So we run a grant cycle for the homeless housing and affordable housing funding every other year. CDBG runs their services program every other year and their capital program every year. This year, we are looking at how we can even further expand the coordination of those programs that have already been coordinating for a dozen years or so with our 0.1% mental health funding grants and the new CIA, Community Investments in Affordable Housing grants. So we've been meeting very frequently to figure out how we can streamline the application process as much as possible so that we're making it easier for agencies that are looking to access this funding to be able to get it. So we're trying to figure out how do we not make people submit like 4 or 5 applications, and we can have them be as few applications as possible. And also how can we coordinate the recommendations that the citizen review groups are making around what gets funded so that we're making sure that the right projects are getting funded the right amounts rather than having this being done in sort of separate silos. So it's a lot of work to get it all coordinated, but it's a very exciting time because we're really hopeful to be able to make some really big steps towards coordination this year and then continue further steps in future years as we move forward. So I believe the plan is that we'll be releasing the calendar for that coordinated grant process this year towards the end of March. So look for that on the website. There'll be information. And again, I always encourage people, if you're interested in grant funding for homelessness and affordable housing, you should get on the county's electronic notification system. It's very easy. You can go to many of the county electronic web pages. There's like a little button that says sign up for electronic notifications. And then you can pick which topics you want to get notified about. So if you want to get notified about every county topic, you're going to get a lot of emails. But you can pick, you just want to get notified about road updates or, housing things or behavioral health things or assessors things, whatever. You can decide. There's a long list of things and you can sort of check boxes to see which things you want to get signed up for. And you can always change that too. It's not, you're not locked in if you decide you're getting more than you want or you want to add something. So really encourage. That's the way that we typically communicate about these grant programs and when the funding deadlines are and what funding is available, because we aren't able to maintain a list that we email out to people. It's just too complicated to keep track of all the changes. So we shifted a few years ago to a system where people who want to be notified can opt into that notification system. So there will be more information coming out about the coordinated grant if you sign up. Marwan, on the screen you see in the second column, the second topic down is coordinated grant application.
Click on that.
If you click on that, that'll take you to the page where we talk about coordinated grant stuff. And if you scroll down, there should be a little button that says sign up for electronic notifications, receive text or email updates. There it is. Did you miss it? It's on the right-hand column, the bottom.
Oh, there we go.
Receive text or email updates, right? Click on that button and then it will take you to a place where you enter your email and then you can sign up for a list of things to get notified about. So anyway, that is a good way to stay informed about what is going on. See, there's your long list of things you can get notices about at the county.
I made the mistake of clicking a lot of these. I get alerts from Tacoma. I get so many.
Yeah, you want to make, yeah, I mean, maybe people want to read about everything that's going on, but probably not. So you can pick the areas that you're interested in finding out about. And as I said, that's how we notify people about things that are happening with the coordinated grant deadlines and things like that. I know people are always interested in the Pacific building, and that project continues to be still in permitting. We are moving through the permitting process. So some progress is being made. Things are getting reviewed. A few weeks ago, we received a request for information from the land use permit, which is part of the process. So they said, hey, we looked at your application. There's a few things we have questions about. Can you get us a little more information on these, answer these questions for us? So our team worked really closely with Rice Fergus Miller, who's the architect on it. And we very quickly turned around that information, got it all back to the Department of Community Development. And now they are reviewing that information. And hopefully, we're going to hear back soon on when we get a date with the hearings examiner before the public hearing. So as soon as we have that, there will be a notice going out. Everybody will get notified. We'll definitely let people know, because we want people to be able to participate and attend that. If you want to find out more information about the Pacific building, you can go to https://kcowa.us/SK housing. Did you get that, Marwan? Did I say it fast enough?
No, I did not, but I will get it.
kcowa.us/SK housing.
Let's see. Right here, frequently asked questions. Can I get there this way?
Nope. Well, maybe. Oh, yeah. If you go back to the landing page for the Housing and Homelessness Division, there will be a link on there to the shelter, that SK housing project.
Let's see, tiny cabins.
SK shelter could be called Pacific Building, Mile Hill Building, SK housing. I think
right here,
at the bottom of
big, like dates.
Yeah. So there's a frequently asked questions on there. There's I think a PowerPoint. There's some photos, and just sort of that's where we put updates. There hasn't been a lot to say for a long time, because the project has just been sitting in permitting for a really long time. So there haven't really been anything exciting to say, other than we're still waiting for a permit. So, but the minute the permits are finalized and approved, then we'll be issuing a request for proposals for a general contractor to work on the project, and taking bids for that project. And then we'll select a winning subcontractor who will be managing and doing all the renovations and site work and things like that for the project. So we are ready to go as soon as our permits are approved.
So Kirsten, I remember when you did this open house back in October on the 26th. Is there going to be another open house?
We're not anticipating another one right now. The next step for public input would be the public hearing at the hearings examiner. I think they do an open public comment period where they can take written public comment, but I think there's also a time when people can show up and give comment in person. And that's kind of this very legal process that we have to step through. Actually, DCD steps through it with the hearings examiner, and we're kind of the applicant in that situation. And so we'll be there presenting information and answering questions. Of course, once the building is all renovated and beautiful and ready for occupancy, we will have a big community open house, celebration, party, ribbon cutting, all of that stuff will happen once we have the building is ready to occupy. But we're still fairly far out from that.
And I would just add, I'm looking here at looks like a PowerPoint, new temporary emergency housing program, Mile Hill Road, April 26, 2021. Like, these things take time. It's not, you can't snap your fingers and all of a sudden there's, more stock available, right? There's a process that you have to go through, and it's tedious, and so people are working as fast as humanly possible. And it's like, it can't get here fast enough, but it's like, it's not for lack of, people are working hard.
Absolutely. And when we started doing this project, I had never done a project like this before. It's pretty unusual that the county steps in and, purchase a building and converts it to a shelter. Typically that work is done by amazing community nonprofit partners. But I certainly had not done it before, and we're fortunate to be contracting with Rice Fergus Miller, who are experts in this. They do a ton of public buildings, especially kind of social service buildings, and they have a lot of experience, which is great because I don't. But I certainly didn't understand how long and complicated this was going to be. It seemed to me like a pretty straightforward, quick project, but then you start getting into things like, okay, if you add more showers, then we have to add more capacity for hot water. Then we have to add more electricity to heat the water. Then we have to add more sewer capacity to have the water leave the building. It just sort of spirals into like all of the systems upgrade. So a lot of the stuff that is being upgraded in the building is stuff that you will not see. It's all behind the walls. It's new electricity, new plumbing, new sewer, a new HVAC system, a sprinkler system, a new roof. There is a kitchen component, which we're building out basically a warming kitchen, but with the capacity to be converted to a full-on commercial kitchen when we have the ability to get more grant funds to do that full build out. So we're just trying to have it be a kitchen where food can be prepared off-site, brought on-site, and then provided to people. But eventually, it'll be a commercial kitchen. So that kind of preparing the infrastructure now for the commercial kitchen in the future has also created more work on the front end, but it will save us a lot of time and money when we're able to do that furnishing of it and build out later. So a lot of this stuff, you're going to walk in and you'll be like, why did this take so long? But believe me, there's been a lot of work done behind the walls, under the floor to make these changes. We're also doing a lot of work on the outside of the building. We're adding ramps and wheelchair access and a bike shelter for people who are biking. I think we're going to be required to add a sidewalk and a bike lane. There's going to be a path from the building up to the street. In the backyard, there's a little picnic area, storage, a dog run, a children's play area. Like, there's a lot of exterior work. We're also doing some fencing repair along the border with the neighbors so that there's a really good solid fence barrier there. There's already a fence there that's mostly intact, but there's a few places where the fence has fallen down or it's been, it's in disrepair. So we're gonna fix all that so it's a solid fence line. So there's landscaping that has to be done, more lighting has to be added. All of this stuff adds up to a fairly complex project with lots of permits required. So that's one of the reasons why it's taking so long.
And Kirsten, this is going to be, I believe, the only shelter in the county that accepts animals, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the Salvation Army, much to their credit, currently in their temporary sheltering program does accept animals, which is wonderful, but we don't have any other permanent shelters or long stay shelters that accept animals. So we've been just overwhelmed with the amount of support we've gotten for the animal sheltering component of this. There's a national movement called co-sheltering. And when we started down this road, like recognizing that a lot of people living outside have animals as part of their family, and they don't have a shelter to go to because most of the shelters won't take animals. And so we wanted to create this new shelter to have co-sheltering, and that in and itself has been a long journey of exploration. And we've been really excited to find out that we have a huge amount of support here locally from local veterinarians, our local humane society. Volunteers are interested in helping with that part of it. And then nationally, there's a bunch of organizations that have a mission of increasing the number of shelters that accept animals. The ASPCA is one that's a really large, animal welfare, I don't even know what it stands for, ASPCA. They have a huge initiative to support shelters. We got a small grant from the ASPCA to pay for all of the animal components of the shelter remodel, because all of our grant funding doesn't pay for that, right? It's all about the people sheltering. And so we have to get a separate grants for the animal sheltering part. I'm actually participating in a conference in 2 weeks on co-sheltering, where it's a national conference, and we're actually going to be part of 2 different panels as kind of a example of a new shelter program that's getting designed and a new facility that's getting designed, and how we can build in better ways to take care of people and animals in the design, and then also in the programming. So we'll be working with Kitsap Rescue Mission on this, and they've got staff who are deeply involved in all of this work as well. So anyway, that part of it has been really exciting, and I'm just thrilled that there's so many contacts out there and so much just support for doing this work. It's critically important to get more people and animals back inside and on track for housing. So
yeah, that is huge. So did I miss, is there a projected opening date?
I'm not even I'm not hanging my hat on anything until we get those permits approved. Once we get it through permitting, including the hearings examiner, and then we put it out for bid, and we will be putting it out for bid saying we want this project done as soon as possible. And one of the things that the contractors will turn into us is their estimated timeline. So once we have that, then we can start saying, well, here's what the contractor is saying that their estimated timeline is. But until that, I don't have any way to project that. Part of it depends on this permitting process. Part of it depends on, again, supply chain stuff. You don't hear about it as much anymore, but it's still a thing in the construction industry. There's still shortages of things. And we have to, fit into their construction time frame and all that. But we'll definitely be putting a premium on moving fast. And we've been trying to tee things up as much as we can with things that we know might take a little longer. We're trying to be proactively prepared to do those things sooner so that we can make this move along faster. Any other questions about the building?
No, I think you covered that. I was just going to say, I think that's it's so important to provide the updates. People aren't thinking every day, like, when is the shelter opening up? So the last time we have a conversation about it, like I said, might be a month or 2 months ago, and they're like, hey, what's going on with that? So
I'm that update is about it every day, but I know it's not necessary. And especially, I genuinely, but especially, with the closing of the Salvation Army, it's definitely on our mind. And we, the goal in our collectively developed homeless crisis response and housing plan for Kitsap County is to have shelters in all parts of the county, not just, Bremerton and South Kitsap now. So the idea is that, after this shelter is done and up and running, then we'll start looking at other locations. A lot of it depends on the funding, though. I mean, that's the bottom line. This is kind of a segue into the legislative update, but I think I've talked about this last time, but one of the things that's really concerning is that the primary source of funding for our homeless programs is seeing a really big shortfall. We've seen a 38% reduction between 2021 and 2022 in our funding, document recording fee funding, the sort of source of the funding for both our state contracts and our local funding. So that is going to have a really big impact on what we can afford going forward. We've put in a lot of legislative requests to backfill this, to sustain this funding, to basically make up some of the difference of that funding in the state budget. But we won't know the outcome of that until the legislative session ends at the end of April. So we're just sort of hoping, encouraging people to advocate, making a big deal that this is going to have a huge impact. So that is something that is really, really going to drive how much money we have available to support the current shelters that we have, and then also future development of shelters.
So let me ask you, Kirsten, how could that potentially impact? Let's say money doesn't flow in and there's just a 38%, chop, and that's a chop. That's not a cut.
Yeah.
That's massive. It's almost 40%.
It would be massive. Yeah. I think we'll do our best to cushion it as much as we can. If we have any rollover funds, or if there's any pandemic funds available, to try to reduce that blow, that cut, that chop, as much as we can. But at a certain point, we will have to we won't be able to fund our programs to the same level that we have been funding them in the past. And so there'll be some really, really difficult decisions made about what to fund and what not to fund. I remember going through this during the Great Recession, and it was painful. The state had a lot less money to work with. The local governments had a lot less money to work with, and we really had to kind of contract what we were able to fund, and it was awful. So we are really hoping that we won't have to do that again.
So are you already doing some strategic planning, for a worst case scenario? Like, hey, we don't get.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, as I said, we won't really know what the consequences are, or like what this is going to look like until the legislature adjourns at the end of April. And then we'll know what we're working with and what the shortfall really looks like. And we'll be figuring out what to do from there.
Is there any insight that you can glean, like what direction things are flowing in? Does it look like there's political will?
Yeah, I know that the Washington Low-Income Housing Alliance has been working really hard on this issue. And I know that there was a letter that was signed a sign-on letter from a lot of different legislators urging the folks working on the budget to make this funding a priority. So there is good awareness, I think, way more than there was before. There is awareness of this as a pretty urgent issue. So I would not lay money on it or anything, but I'm guessing they'll probably do something to try to backfill. Now, whether they can 100% backfill is probably unlikely, because there's just a lot of other competing needs out there as well, and other important things to fund. So, but I think we're going to get, my guess is we would get some help with this. We just don't know how much at this point.
So that's a good segue here. There was a question that someone wanted me to ask, and they couldn't make it to the show, and this was for everyone on the panel. And it is, what would it take to start getting families into housing? And can you educate us on why it's so hard?
Do you want to go ahead, Katie? I've been talking a lot. My throat's parched.
So Bremerton Housing Authority specifically works off a lot of wait lists. So it's really important to get on the wait list when they are open. But I want to speak to the second question on why it's so hard. There's a lot of reasons that kind of come together. There's a lot of, to qualify, you have to fill out these forms, you have to do certain things, certain steps, certain timelines. We're always trying to reduce those barriers that we have control over, but there are barriers, rental history, credit checks, things like that are sometimes they just make it really difficult to get into long-term housing. I always say, if you have an opportunity to choose like you could go to a food bank if you make sure to prioritize your house payment first. So it is really hard to get in when you've lost your home. So I just have a unique, maybe narrow perspective on that, but I do think there's a lot of barriers that add into this, and we are always trying to reduce some of those barriers we have control over. But a lot of requirements, a lot of programs, they don't talk to each other. Like say that you went for energy assistance at KCR and you had to verify your income, but to get something from the housing authority, you also had to verify your income, but we may need different types of income verification, and it's really complicated. And again, we try to coordinate, but there's a long way to go on that as well. So there's a lot of reasons. Specifically, getting into housing is difficult. So that's what I have to say about that.
Katie, does the Bremerton Housing Authority do any advocacy work? And I would assume this would be a follow-up question from this person, to say, hey, feds, HUD, you need to streamline this process. You're making it so hard for people to have access to support and assistance. Does BHA do any kind of advocacy work there?
And we work closely with HUD, local offices like in Seattle, as well as the national offices through our associations that we're members of. There are large associations that advocate on behalf of housing authorities and residents. There's just a lot going on that alone we might not be able to advocate on the bigger picture of, because housing authorities are dealing with this throughout the state and the country, just trying to manage different programs and different requirements. They may look the same on the outside, but they're managed very differently. So we are always working on it in different angles, but it is a slow process. I think it's really well acknowledged right now that it is difficult. When we talk about getting landlords onto the program and what are the benefits to the landlords, we do what we can, but it is still complicated. We do inspections, but they also still have to do their own move-in inspections. We don't do those it just adds a lot of extra steps that right now that's just what we have to manage to be compliant with the requirements and make sure we're providing the programs as they were written. So.
And, to that end, Jill Stanton has done some amazing work into getting resources into the city, into the county. So she's been working her magic in a lot of different arenas there. Fantastic. Kirsten, same question for you. What would it take?
Yeah, I would say we already are getting a lot of families into housing. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the basis of the question is in terms of starting to get families into housing, because I think there's work being done all of the time. Hundreds, and actually, I think probably more than 1,000 families got into housing last year through KCR programs, through housing KidSet programs, through Bremerton Housing Authority programs, through Olive Crest programs. There's tons of organizations working all of the time right now, getting families into housing and being very successful at doing that. And there's still families that need help, right? There's a lot of work being done to prevent people from getting evicted so that they don't lose their housing in the first place. We've put millions of dollars towards this effort. And I need to come back to that because I want to talk about that in just a minute. But we've put millions and millions of dollars into the effort during the pandemic to not have people get evicted. But as we've talked about before, one of the challenges is that there's just not enough housing for people, especially people who make lower incomes. And so all of this work that's being done by the task force that was talked about earlier, and the new funding, the CF funding, all of that is in an attempt to increase the production of housing units so that there is more housing for people to go into, and particularly, again, housing that is affordable for people with lower incomes. So it's a complicated problem. You've heard me talk before about the musical chairs problem, and this is exactly that issue. We just don't have enough houses for everybody. So it's harder for people to compete in the housing market, even though I think it's getting just marginally better recently, but it's still pretty difficult.
It gives me, you know, in regards to, you know, the shelter in Port Orchard, I think it's that same thing, right? Like folks, they see the issue and they're kind of going about their daily lives, and then when they tap back in and think about it, it's like, oh, so what's going on with how do we solve this problem, right? Because folks aren't necessarily thinking about it every day, and that's where the question kind of comes from.
Great
So
question.
I'm making an assumption they're not here, but that's where I'm thinking that
it's a great question, and I think it's one that, like, for exactly what you said, like people are just going along their lives. They hear a friend or a family member, or they see somebody and they're like, why is it so hard for them to get into housing? Like, what's going on? And that is a totally valid and helpful question to answer. And I think, you know, Katie did a great job explaining some of the complexity of working with federal regulations that get in our way and create some barriers sometimes. But then ultimately, at the end of the day, there's just not enough housing for everybody. Washington State passed a law in 2021 that said that when some jurisdictions, and Kitsap is one of those, do their next round of comprehensive plan updates. And comprehensive plans are the land use and zoning plans for each jurisdiction. So every city and county government has one. And when we do those, we have to specifically figure out how we're going to accommodate a lot more affordable housing, specifically housing for people in different income bands. And the Department of Commerce did an analysis and a projection of how many units would be needed in every county in different income bands, so that then those jurisdictions can take those aggregate numbers for their county and figure out how many of these each city is going to accommodate in their comprehensive plans, and how much is going to be in the countywide comprehensive plan. And then we have to write land use policies and zoning and regulation that accommodates that amount of affordable housing development. So just to give you a sense, the Department of Commerce released their final projection of the need last week, and they found that their estimate is that there are more than 1 million units of housing needed in the next 20 years across the state.
1 million.
1 million, yeah. And in Kitsap County, I think the number was around 24,000 units of housing in different income bands. So we're going to try to figure out in the next 20 years how we can plan for 24,000 units of housing in these different income bands across all of the cities and county jurisdictions. And so that work is underway right now. And I just always encourage people to get involved with your comprehensive plan, you know, processes in whatever city or county jurisdiction that you live in. There's a lot of opportunity for public input and public process. And so if you're interested in this and it's important to you, get involved, because this is the time when that's going to make a huge difference in where that housing happens and how it happens. So that gives you a sense of like the massive shortfall of housing, the massive shortage of housing that we have right now in our state and in our county.
Tell me that year again. 1 million units by when?
I think it's 2044.
2044. I can't even envision that. That's so much. It's a huge number.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look it up. This was just, here we go. You can look it up online. It's Department of Commerce. It's 1.1 million new homes will be needed across the state in the next 20 years. Permanent support. This is across the whole state. Permanent supported housing units, which are 0 to 30% area median income, 122,469 units. Non-permanent supported housing, but low income, less than 30%, 220,539 units. And then 180,000 for 30 to 50% AMI, 124,000, 50 to 80% AMI. Yep, you got it. You're looking at what I'm reading off. Scroll down a little bit more and you'll see the chart that I'm reading. So this is a massive amount, and you can click on those links and see the amount just for Kitsap County specifically. 91,000 emergency shelter beds will be needed. I think in Kitsap it's 1,600, just under 1,600 is the number for emergency shelter beds that are projected to be needed in the next 20 years. So this is a massive undertaking. The legislature is, working really hard. Right now is today is the cutoff day for bills that have to get passed out of the House of Origin. They're the first house where they're proposed, unless they're necessary to implement the budget. So there's a lot of activity right now trying to get bills passed. Like they'll probably be doing it until midnight tonight. And some of those bills are trying to provide more funding options for local jurisdictions around affordable housing to meet this need.
That's hard to wrap my head around. Like that is a massive number.
It's a massive number. Yeah. On a slightly different related note, I've been just telling everybody that today is the 3rd anniversary of the declaration of the emergency, the pandemic emergency. So 3 years ago today, Kitsap County declared a state of emergency related to this pandemic. The state did it at a slightly different time, the federal government different time, but Kitsap County government, March 8th was the day that we declared state of emergency. So kind of amazing. 3 years ago.
3 years. Yeah, it doesn't seem like 3 years. No. 3 years. Wow.
March 8th, 2020. Yeah, crazy. So, a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years has been both in response to the pandemic, but also there was a bunch of extra money available during the pandemic. Like the federal and state government opened up their coffers, their savings account, and said, here, have a bunch of money to take care of people. And so we've been doing that with the eviction prevention program, the KEPA program, Kitsap Eviction Prevention Assistance Program. We've distributed like $30 million, helped almost 4,000 households so far. And so it's been just a remarkable effort. We are going to be opening up the wait list again very briefly for some more applications. You should be seeing information about that coming out really shortly. All those applications will be going through Kitsap Community Resources. So stay tuned for more on that. But there will be one more opportunity to get some help with back rent if you haven't already been helped. So that is the caveat. So we're still looking for households that haven't received assistance yet, who are behind on rent and are having trouble getting caught up. So yeah, you can check out the KEPA page for that, both on the Kitsap Community Resources and the county. We'll have information about that coming up really shortly.
As we come to a close, Kirsten, I don't know if you would see value in this, but I do. What are your thoughts on maybe having a discussion, maybe during our deep dives on lessons learned, since we're hitting this 3-year anniversary of going through a pandemic? What did you guys do well? What would you implement next time? What would you do differently? What can the community do to support should another pandemic or something else happen? Our learning curve would be a lot shorter. But I'd love to have that discussion. I think that'd be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, really interesting to think about that. And I think it'd be a great conversation for the Housing Authority to have, because they were very deeply involved in a lot of this work as well, and the county to have that. I think it might be also like maybe another deep dive would be more about this sort of comprehensive plan, projections, and kind of what that means. Maybe there's a guest speaker that we could wrestle up from the county to come and just provide a little bit of background information on this. I don't think anybody intends for it to be mysterious or complicated, but it just is complicated. And the county tries to provide lots of opportunities for people to get involved and for public access and public comment. And we always wish there was more of that, right? We don't get as nearly as much as we wish, and we want more people to weigh in and be part of the process. And so maybe that would be a fun opportunity at a future deep dive, maybe a couple, like 2 months from now or something. The other thing is that, in a month from now, we'll have a better idea of some legislation that's close to passing. We'll be at April, what's the second weekend?
The 8th.
April.
Be around the 8th.
April. We'll be at April 11th, and
11th.
The last day for the bills to be approved in the opposite house is April 12th, unless budget related bills. And so usually a lot of bills get passed before April 12th. So we might know something, we might know some stuff. So it might be useful to do some more legislative check-ins then. Definitely have more information about what's going on. And then, obviously in May, another update would be good. I know, Marwan, that you've been really doing a lot of advocacy and a lot of work around legislative stuff. So you probably have some really cool perspectives on that as well.
Well, a lot of it is just really to give access to people. There's so many different places that people need to go to get the information. So to try to centralize it and pull those pieces out so people get what they want in one spot is really what we're trying to do. So I know we're starting this. It was like, we're going to do updates. We don't have necessarily a deep dive topic, but man, we have run through an hour like that. It was super fast.
It's fast, isn't it?
Chock full of information, right? I mean, this is all good stuff. And I learn something every time that you come on, for sure. And again, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule once a month to appear and give us all of this.
Absolutely my pleasure. Yeah. I love it. It's absolutely my pleasure. And I'm really excited to reach more people. We don't have a lot of venues to talk about this stuff. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Marwan. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, Katie.
I was going to say earlier, I appreciate though that you can come some medium to talk about the progress of the shelter, because it's a really good example of how long it takes. You want to say, you bought a building that already exists, just put a shelter in it. And now there's coding and RFPs and proposals and contractors and permitting. And even though you work in the county, you don't work in that department of the county.
Yeah.
And it's just a good example of being able to talk about it in real time. And I appreciate it. I think it's really good lens into like what it really takes. It's not just buying a building. It's not just buying a hotel and just converting it right away. It takes a lot of work to do it right. So I appreciate it.
And I think it also is a good example of why it takes so long to get more affordable housing units. Mm-hmm. So, the legislature will pass some funding available for new affordable housing units, and then it takes a year to get that funding granted out to people, and then it can take 2 or 3 or 4 years before a building actually gets built. So even though there's a ton of activity right now in the legislature and all of this planning that's going to be being done at each jurisdictional level, it's still not going to be, we're not going to be seeing the instant result of a whole bunch more housing units all of a sudden. My hope and dream is that in 2 to 3 years, we start seeing a big production boom of affordable housing as this money starts to be put into actual projects and makes its way through purchasing, permitting, and construction and all of that. But, there's good work being done right now. Don't get me wrong. There is some happening, but I hope that we're really going to start seeing the fruits of all of this work that we're doing now in a couple of years when those buildings actually start being able to house people.
And there has been quite a bit of fruit. Don't discount that. A lot of great work has been done in this county by a lot of great people, including the two that I'm on here on this panel with.
Thanks, Marwan.
So with that, I want to thank Miss Consistent Katie for always being here and being present and coming up with great ideas. Again, we'll be back next Wednesday for the Kids Up Housing and Homeless Coalition meeting and award meeting with food and refreshments down at the Norm Dix building, aka City Hall. And you can catch us right here in about an hour and a half for City Council. Public comment will be there. If you want to access and watch it through here or through BCAT, you can. But don't forget to subscribe, like, and share so you never miss our information at the Conduit on YouTube. All right. So for Kirsten Jewell and Katie Sharp, I am Marwan Cameron. This conversation with housing concerns. This is the Conduit. We'll see you next time.